A very warm good morning to one and all present here. My name is Nouria Siddiqui. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to another insightful session organized by the Department of English. We are honored to introduce our esteemed resource person for today's session, Mrs. Shaya Jamal. She is currently pursuing her PhD in English from Sage University and successfully qualified MP SET in 2022. She served as a guest lecturer at RGPV University, gaining valuable teaching lessons. Mrs. Jamal also completed a certificate course in modern masterpieces of world literature from Harvard University, along with a Cambridge English Level 2 certificate. She is also a gold medalist in BA English Honours. Her academic excellence and diverse experiences make her the perfect speaker for today's session on 20th century British drama. We welcome you, ma'am.
So, our focus today would be 20th century British drama. So, I think some of you might have studied this already as a part of your syllabus. But whenever we study works of a particular age, it's always important to understand the background of that age. That always helps us in gaining a better understanding of the works and how they are written and what are the themes behind it. So, a basic introduction of 20th century British drama is that 20th century, as we all know, is known as the modern age in English literature. Now, the periodization of this age is a little difficult and it varies. So, mostly we categorize it based on 1900s to mid 20th century. This age is particularly characterized by a significant break from the traditional literary conventions, and it focuses on experimentation, individualism, and new ways of understanding the world. So there's a different way in which the text of this age are written, because they experiment with style, and you might find a lot of stream of consciousness in their works, etc. So it has different way of writing. Now, there are certain terms that you should know when you focus on 20th century. One of them is realism. Now, as the term suggests, as the word suggests, realism in any genre focuses on depicting ordinary life and characters in a very real sense. So, anything that is close to the ordinary, regular life that you find in texts is what you will find in 20th century literature. So, they will not try to include supernatural elements or something that is very different from the realistic world. They will have things that are very real and very, very relatable, so to say. Second term that you should know is theatre of absurd. Now, some of you might know this. It's a very common and it's a very popular term. So, theatre of absurd is actually a theatrical movement that emerged in the mid 20th century. Now, the works that are related to theatre of absurd, you will find that there is a lot of meaninglessness in their works. It's very chaotic. If you have read, for example, Birthday Party by Harold Pinter, you will find that the work is there is no sense actually. When you read, they're very illogical. The dialogues are very nonsensical and the plot is not clear. There is no resolution. There is no storyline, so to say. So there is no meaning, no structure. So these kind of plays are categorized as theatre of absurd under the absurdism. Okay, so these are the themes that you will find. 20th century literature mainly focuses on these themes. One is realism, as we have talked about, social commentary, the social life of that time. Next is philosophical exploration. So very psychological, philosophical questions are asked in such plays and in such texts, because they are searching for meaning. Like I have said, that there is a lot of meaninglessness. So they search for meaning, and such kind of questions you will often find such kind of questions in these texts. Next is experimentation and absurdism that I have just talked about. Also, there is focus on individualism. So they are very individualistic in their approach. You will find that they are mostly talking about individual self, the struggles that an individual faces most of the time. Then war and its impact, of course, because this was the time of world wars. The First World War had just ended, and the Second World War was in, like, as you know, 1945. So it was approaching. So there was this sense of the psychological impact of World War. These things you will find in such works of 20th century. Now, because our focus is drama, so we would be talking about the famous playwrights during this time and their works. Now, T.S. Eliot, you must have studied T.S. Eliot in your syllabus as well. He is known for, of course, poetry, fiction, but since we're focusing on plays, you should know that he has written 7 plays. Now, when you are preparing for NET, or SET, or any such exam for that matter, you should always know the works of all major writers. You should know who has written what. But it is humanly impossible to focus on each and every work and to know details of each work. So you should have a very detailed view of famous works. However, in your mind, you should always memorize all the works written by a writer. And the best way to do this is by making notes. So if you are someone who can make notes and can memorize easily with notes, so it's always a good idea to have handy notes available for all writers. So, for example, you can write the name of a writer and then all works. And later you can have detailed analysis of his famous works. So all writers have some works that are famous. For example, T.S. Eliot. He has written 7 plays. Out of these 7 plays, Murder in the Cathedral is the most famous. So you should know that these are the 7 plays. You should memorize the names of these 7 plays. However, Murder in the Cathedral, the plot, the characters, the details should be something that you should remember. Okay? So these are the 7 plays that were written by T.S. Eliot. If you want, you can note this down, or if you want, I'll share the PPT later also. So these are the plays. If we focus on Murder in the Cathedral, it is a verse drama. So why I'm showing you this is so that you can also understand how are you supposed to make notes for NET or SET whenever you prepare for it. See, this has heading, for example, the name of the work. After that, you are not supposed to have a huge storyline and what happened in the play, etc. Always remember that the exam that you're preparing for is very different from your college exam. So in college exams, you're supposed to write lengthy answers. However, in competitive exams, you have to select the correct option because they're MCQ based. So it always helps if you have very precise bullet points ready. So if this is the name of the work, Murder in the Cathedral. After this, I have written very precise bullet points. So these are some factual details of the work that you should be aware of. Okay. So, for example, it is a verse drama by T.S. Eliot. This play portrays the assassination of Archbishop Thomas Becket. So what is it about? So very crisp details of what the work is about, what it actually focuses on. And if there is a certain timeline, for let's say from 2nd to 29th December, it focused on this particular timeline. So you should be aware of this. If you get a question, which work by T.S. Eliot actually has actions that occur from 2nd to 29th December. So these are the kind of questions that you can get in exam. Then it deals with Beckett's internal struggle. That's the focus of the play. The book is divided into 2 parts. You should be aware of the setting of the play. If part 1 takes place in the hall, the second takes place in the hall and cathedral. So these are the kind of notes that you should prepare when you are when your focus is, let's say, NET or SET exams. Okay, so your notes should be very precise. They should be focused towards an MCQ based exams. So that will help you even in your college exams, because when you're writing long answers, you can always flesh in details in these bullet points. The next famous playwright is John Osborne. As I think some of you must be knowing about this, Look Back in Anger is his very, very famous play. It's a realist play actually, and it was written in 1956. So for some works, it's also important to know the year in which it was written. So if a work is famous, it would be a good idea if you can memorize the year in which it was written. Also, if you look at the previous year questions of NET, you will find that the questions are very chronological. They ask you which work was written first, which work was written later. So if you read works in a chronological order, that will help you in understanding and answering questions when you sit for the exam. The next point that we have here is that it was written in 17 days. Now, this is again a question that can be asked. So if you try and focus on the kind of points that I have written, you will understand what are the things that you need to focus on when you prepare a work. Then, for example, we have these two major characters, Jimmy Porter and Ellison. So the name of the female character is in red and the name of the male character is in green. So that will help us in distinguishing the male and female characters and in understanding what's the basic storyline of the play. The rest of the characters you should be aware of the names, but it's important to always look at a text from the exam point of view. For example, it has 3 acts. This again can be a question. Then coming to G.B. Shaw. Now, G.B. Shaw has written a lot of plays and he is very well known for plays. If you look at 20th century, you will understand that fiction and basically novels dominate the 20th century. But there are playwrights like G.B. Shaw who have majorly written plays actually. So it's important to understand his plays in great detail because he has written a lot of plays. Now, Arms and the Man, I think, is a very, very famous comedy by G.B. Shaw. And again, see, this can be a question. If a text has its name originating from some other text, this is something that you should always be aware of. For example, Arms and the Man, the title comes from opening words of Virgil. So this is something that can easily be a question. The second point, if you look at the second point, it takes place during the 1885 Serbo-Bulgarian War. So again, this can be a very important question. Then the major characters like Raina and Sergius were engaged. And then later, if you look at the story. So this is something that you should remember when you appear for exams later. Even if you have not read something as a part of your syllabus, you should try and look at ways you can understand the storyline of the play in short and from an exam perspective. For example, if you look at, there's a channel on YouTube and the name of the channel is Course Hero. So if ever you want to use audio visuals, you can search the name of a text on Course Hero and you will find a very good audio visual format summary of a text. Now that is for the exams that are actually competitive in nature, not for your college exams, but for exams like NET and SET, that helps because there is so much that has to be done. There is so much that has to be read. So it is humanly not possible to read each and everything. So whenever you try and substitute reading for, let's say, adaptations or something that's available and that can easily give you a glimpse of the text, that helps. Next is Apple Cart. Apple Cart is a very, very, very famous play and there is a possibility it might be there in your syllabus later on. So if you're preparing, let's say, Apple Cart, so the title and a lot of people leave the subheading. So always remember that when you take a particular work, it's important to understand if it has a subheading, if there is an origin of the title elsewhere in any other text, and what is the genre, what is the main ideology behind the play, and let's say it has lengthy monologues. So this can again be a question in if you're giving an exam. So this can easily be asked as a question, that which play has lengthy monologues, which play by GB Shaw has lengthy monologues. Then it has the main characters. There are a lot of characters. The main characters is King Magnus. He defends his role in the government and he wants his role to continue. And there is Proteus, who is the PM. Now, there are lots of other characters, but if you have less time, you can easily focus on the main characters, the major characters, and leave the rest of the characters. But if you keep them in your notes, maybe when you flip through them multiple times, you will end up memorizing some of the characters. So it's always a good idea to have names of the characters and the basic points in your notes whenever you're preparing. Then we have Harold Pinter. Have you studied Harold Pinter so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so which play?
Ma'am, Betrayal.
Betrayal.
And the Homecoming.
The Homecoming. And you haven't studied The Birthday Party yet?
No, I'm not yet.
Okay. So let's say you have studied Homecoming. So give me a gist of, and in bullet points, just tell me what Homecoming is about.
It's an absurd drama. I think it was first performed in 1965. And it has 6 characters, and it has been read in, like, the most famous interpretation of it is like the mother fixation, and like it has been read in from a psychological point of view. So yeah, and the characters are Lenny, and they're like of different ages. So it's somewhat, and it's a 2-act play. Yes.
Okay, very good. So so that's the way you are supposed to approach plays, or any text for that matter. The basic understanding should be clear, the characters should be clear, and when was it written, and if there's some important feature that stands out. So let's say if we focus on The Birthday Party, because that's again a very, very famous play apart from Betrayal and Homecoming. So The Birthday Party was written in 1957. Now the main characters are Pete and Meg. There's Stanley, whose birthday party they're preparing for, and now there are different characters that come here, that come to their house, and you don't know why they're coming for, and what are they doing, when is the birthday party, what is happening, and some 2 guests like Goldberg and McCann come, and they all of a sudden start doing weird activities, and you don't know what's happening in the house. It's all chaotic. There's a birthday present that Lulu brings, and that birthday present is drum. Now, since it's an absurd play, for absurd plays and for plays like these, it's very difficult to prepare notes and to understand what's important, because they really don't make much sense. However, since they are a part of the syllabus and because they can be asked, so you have to, it's your task to pick out the important things and to remember that, okay, these are the things that can be asked. These are very factual in nature, and I need to remember these. So, for example, in The Birthday Party, when the birthday party takes place, Pete is not there. So that becomes an important point. Then they play a game in the birthday party. The name of that game is Blind Man's Buff. So again, that can be a question, which game do they play? So despite the fact that it's very stupid and you don't understand what's happening, but at any point they can pick up any feature of the play and ask you. So this is how you are supposed to remember even plays of this sort, which are very difficult to really understand, but still you can always pick up some factual points, some details that if you look at them from the exam point of view, then these, for example, like I was telling you, always focus on the important works and then a list of all the works written by that writer. So for example, I have this list of all the works that have been written by Harold Pinter, but I have focused on one work which is important, and there are other works that are very important which are in bold here, bold form. bold format. So No Man's Land is also important, and The Homecoming and Betrayal, like we have just talked about, they are also important. And you should know that these are the works that have been written. A list should always be ready in your mind for important writers. Then we have Samuel Beckett. Have you read Samuel Beckett?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Which play?
Ma'am, Waiting for Godot.
Okay, so can anybody tell me what Waiting for Godot is all about? A basic gist of Waiting for Godot.
Ma'am, it's an absurdist play, and it has a barren land where two characters, Vladimir and Estragon, are waiting for somebody named Godot who never arrives, basically.
Okay, right. So so that's what the entire play is all about. But now when we look at it from the exam perspective, this story really doesn't help us, because that's not a question that can be asked in the exam, that what are they waiting for. It's very easy. So there are things that can be asked in the exam if you look at it from the exam perspective. Now, for example, they are waiting near a leafless tree. Now this is something that you should know, because this can be a question. Similarly, there's a boy who comes with a message that Godot will not come, and then he addresses Vladimir as Mr. Albert. Now this can be a question. So you always have to pick up things. If you read a play in detail, or if you look at a very solid storyline, you will then understand that these are the aspects that I need to focus on, and these can be a part of my notes, and that really helps. For example, it is subtitled as a tragicomedy in 2 acts. Now this is something that most of us don't know, because we don't focus on it that way. We look at it from the story perspective, and that's what our college exams demand from us. But when you are preparing for exams that are competitive in nature, you will have to shift your approach a little, in a way that it also helps you in preparing for your college exams. But at the same time, your end goal should be to be able to answer such questions in competitive exams. For example, Beckett's translation of his own original French language play, En Attendant Godot. So these are some things that can easily be a part of the exam. Next is this is again a list of plays of other works by Beckett. So like I said, we have focused on Waiting for Godot because that is the most important work. However, you should know that these are the works which have been written by Beckett, because they pick up any work and then they can ask you who was the playwright. Also, they have match the following valid questions, in which they have writers in one column and then plays in one column. So it's always a good idea to remember all names of all the works by important authors. Next is some tips for the exam. Now, how many of you are preparing for, of course, you are in college, but you have a lot of time. Still, how many of you would want to prepare for NET or SET exams? All of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so have you all started preparing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have started preparing, all of you?
No, ma'am. Actually, some of us are first year students, so we haven't
Okay.
started yet.
Okay, all right. So see, whenever you start preparing, it's always important to remember that even if you're in college, you of course might feel that you have a lot of time and the exam is there's still a lot of time. But trust me, when you sit for the exam, you understand that no time was ever a lot of time, because there is always so much that has to be prepared. There is always so much that has to be read. There is always so much that has to be done. So the earlier you start, the better it is. I am not saying that you have to constantly prepare a lot right now. However, starting and you can just start reading, and you can start preparing, and probably you can start making notes and looking at texts from the view of exam. So that always helps. So the earlier you start, the better that will be. Now, there are certain tips that I have written down based on my personal experience, and these are things that will help you even if you start now and you will be giving exam, let's say 4 to 5 years later, or let's say 3 years later. But these are tips that will help you at any stage of preparation. So one is always study authors and their works chronologically, because you cannot just pick up, let's say today you are picking up some text from Victorian age, someday you are picking up one text from Romantic age. That is not something that you're supposed to do, because the exam always asks questions based on chronological order. And these days they have increased the number of questions they asked based on chronology. So they sometimes end up giving years, and you have to match when was which text written. And sometimes they ask you to arrange them from the earliest and to the last work. So always study chronologically. Start from, let's say, Anglo-Saxon age, and then dheere dheere you can start proceeding with all ages and their works respectively. So it's always important to remember the sequence of the works, and even in a particular age, sometimes they give very confusing questions of chronology. So let's say they will give you 5 authors of Romantic age, and you will have to arrange them according from the earliest to the last work. So for this, it's very, very important to understand when was which work written, and the best way to remember that, because I know that it's not possible for you, and it will never be possible for you to remember the years of all the works. So the best way is to study them in a sequence. Shuru se, if you maintain that sequence, you will not face difficulty later on. The second point is analysis of PYQs. Now, whenever we sit for an exam, if you have not seen the previous year papers, if you have not seen the previous year questions, there is no way you can predict what the exam expects from you. In order to understand what the exam expects from you and what are you supposed to do, always analyze the previous year questions. And you are not just supposed to read the previous year questions and see ki kya kya aa raha hai, ko kya kya nahi aa raha. That doesn't help. You have to analyze. Now, by analysis, I mean you will have to look at the questions and understand why and how are they asked. And every year they have a set pattern of questions that they repeat. So if your analysis is strong and if you analyze the questions properly, then those questions that are repeated will, I think that will really help you, because you will be ready with those questions. And after all, it's a competitive exam, so even 2 marks extra can really help you in crossing the... Okay, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So even 2 marks extra can really help you in crossing the cutoff. So that is why it's important to analyze the previous year questions, be very clear with what they are asking, what are the kind of questions that they're asking, and then prepare accordingly. Don't just start right away, okay, I'm preparing for this exam, and just start preparing on your own. Do not do this. Always look at the previous year questions, try and understand what is it that they're asking, what is the demand of the exam, and what do they expect you to know. Next is limited sources and multiple revisions. Now, this is a mistake that most of the candidates make when they prepare for an exam. They always expand their sources to unlimited limits, to unlimited extent. What they do is they keep studying one book, then another, and till the day of the exam, they're still studying. So if you look for sources and if you look for books, there is no end to it. You can go on looking for them and you can go on searching for books. So please do not do this. you have to finalize your sources. So these are the books that I would refer, or let's say these are the notes that I will refer, and just revise them multiple times. So if you study one source, let's say 10 times, that will help you more compared to you studying 10 sources just once. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say?
Yes, ma'am.
So always focus on limited sources, less books, but if you revise it multiple times, that will really help you in recollecting facts when you sit for the exam. Next thing that you need to remember is practicing MCQs. Now, because our college exams demand us, the demand of the college exams is writing answers most of the times. They are also MCQ in nature sometimes, but mainly you have to write answers. So when you sit for MCQ based exams, the approach is very different. There's a very different way you are supposed to approach MCQ based questions. The only way you can do it nicely is by practicing lots and lots of MCQs. Let's say if you set a target that I will solve 5 to 10 MCQs on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So this will improve your MCQ solving skills, because that is something that is really required. When you write the exam, you will understand that MCQs need a certain mindset and they need a certain strategy when you're solving them. A lot of times you will not know answers to a lot of questions. So at such times, what helps is a lot of times guesswork helps at these times. So that comes with practice. This is not something that you just go and you just start guessing randomly in exams. That will not help. That comes with practice, and to be able to guess well is something that you will be able to do only with practice. So practice as many MCQs as you can. Next is don't ignore paper 1. Now the paper 2, I think, as you must be aware, paper 2 consists of questions based on English literature only, and paper 1 has questions that are from research methodology and teaching aptitude. Now, a lot of people, what they do is they study literature very well. They go on preparing literature. However, they completely leave paper 1 because it has numericals and it has a very small portion of maths actually. So a lot of people leave that. Please don't make that mistake. Paper 1 is not supposed to be ignored. Do your best to ensure that you are completely prepared with the syllabus of paper 1, because that helps. If you are scoring very well in paper 2 and you're not scoring well in paper 1, it doesn't make sense. You will not be able to clear the exam. So while you're studying literature, also always remember that paper 1 is something that cannot be ignored, and you have to study. Maybe you can just allot a few hours per week to paper 1, but just don't leave it out. Always make sure both papers are important, and paper 1 can give you an edge over other candidates when you are not scoring very well in paper 2. Paper 1 can really help you. So make sure you're prepared well with paper 1 as well. Next is time management in exam. So this is something that comes with practice. Time management is something that you can do well only with practice. So make sure you practice a lot. That will help you in understanding how much time you are supposed to allot to each question, to each section of the paper. So time management is very important, and the best way to do that is to create an exam-like environment at your home and give, let's say, a mock test. So when you give mock test, you will understand how are you faring in time management aspect, because honestly speaking, there is, of course, when you sit for the exam, you will understand that a lot of times what happens is, let's say the last 10 questions of the paper are unseen passage or maybe unseen poetry. But what happens is, because you are falling short of time, you end up skipping those questions. And later you understand that, okay, those were unseen passage. I could have easily scored, let's say, 20 marks. So these are things that have to be avoided, and the best way to do that is to give mocks. Give as many mocks as you can, maybe on a weekly basis, or because you have time right now, you can start giving mocks. Let's say one mock per month. So that will help you in understanding your time management wala ratio. Next thing is making use of audio visuals. Since you're studying for a very long time and you will be preparing for a long time, so it becomes very after a particular time, you get very bored of studying. So audio visuals at this time really help if you can make use of adaptations or like I told you about Course Hero. It's a channel on YouTube. So they have very good visuals. They explain the overview of texts very nicely. So things like these. Let's say you're reading Jane Austen and you get tired. So maybe you can watch the adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. So things like these, because audio visuals stick to our mind and they help us in memorizing things better. So you will always remember something that you have seen for a longer time. So try and make use of audio visuals. Try and make your preparation interesting and your studying interesting. Do not make it very boring, because this is something that you will have to do for a long time. So try and make use of as many audio visuals as you can. And the last is current updates regarding literature. Now, this is something that a lot of us skip because we are so focused on preparing the static aspect of the syllabus. Always remember that current updates for literature are very important in exams like NET and SET. So you should know, when I talk about current updates, I mean the prizes that are given. For example, the Nobel Prize in Literature, the Pulitzer Prize. So there is a Jnanpith Award. So there are a lot of awards that are given. So you should always be aware of these because they are asked in the exam very often. So remember that while you're preparing for the static portion, do not leave the current updates. Whatever is happening in the current scenario, always be updated with that. So that is it.